Ready, Jim?
Yes.
All right, it's 5 o'clock and we will call the meeting to order. Roll call. Everybody's here?
I'm here. Here. Present.
There's only 4 of us, so approval of the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda. I will second.
Second, motion by Jim, second by Tom to approve the agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Recognition of visitor comments. Is there anybody that would like to say anything to the board before we start? Seeing none, we will move on. Discussion and action, resignation of Zach Raff as commissioner. I just as a practice for the board, and we didn't get it on the agenda the last time. A lot of things have transpired since then. But I think what we should do as a board is formally accept Zach's recommendation and designate one of us to send him a thank you letter for his time on the board.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
So I will entertain a motion to accept his resignation formally.
I will make a motion to accept Zach's resignation and also acknowledge him with a nice thank you letter.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Jim, second by Jerry, to accept Zach's resignation. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, seeing that it was unanimous, there's nobody to oppose. As I stated in an email to you, and I just thought we would state it publicly, more so than between us, that the PR&D committee felt that it was their responsibility to appoint the somebody for the vacancy. And they had a meeting to discuss this, and their discussion centered around is there actually enough time left to appoint somebody? Because they would appoint the PR&D meeting was going to discuss appointing somebody, then they would have to take it to the full county board, which was not for, I think it's in 2 weeks. And so essentially, before we would get anybody on board would be like 5 weeks before the annual meeting. And so there really wasn't enough time to get everything done. I attended that meeting and I explained to them that this group was functioning well. And it was my opinion that this group could function with an even number and that we would get to the annual meeting and that it wouldn't necessarily cause us. It wasn't a critical decision. And so they left it at that. I will also tell you at that meeting, I did update the PR&D meeting or committee of our progress. And they were appreciative of that. And I told them that we would certainly be willing to come back anytime they want us to give a report to what was taking place and kind of where we're at. So that's where it's that I left it. Any discussions on that?
No, that sounds like the best mode of action, and it sounds also like the committee felt that was the best thing too, so.
Yeah. I think that,
And it was just for people listening, it's actually unprecedented because there aren't any rules for an interim Lake District committee in filling a vacancy. It hasn't happened before.
right,
So we were all kind of operating in the dark.
right. It was the least disruptive of it. Had we had more time, it would certainly have been, a logical thing to replace that position. Now, the only fly in the ointment here is that Zach was the treasurer. And that is a position, on the board. So there are two things that we can do, okay, and I'll just throw these out. I'm fine either way, but I certainly, just to get the discussion rolling. Number one, either Jim or Jerry, you can certainly volunteer to be a treasurer, or the other thing that we could do is we could, because we only have 3 week or 2 months to go before our annual meeting, we could combine it with the secretary treasurer, which, some smaller organizations, like there's township boards, it's one and the same. So it's totally up to you.
I make a motion to combine the secretary treasurer position for the next 3 weeks.
Why didn't I see that coming?
I will second it.
That's
And
fine.
just for the point of clarity, I talked to no one about this. Okay? So it's totally,
Yeah, it's not a problem.
okay. Well, and
Thank you,
it
John.
kind of makes paperwork sense.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's just a month.
I have the checkbook, so
Well, you kind of knew that one was coming anyway. So
Yep.
you made that motion?
Yes, I did.
And
I seconded.
And you seconded. There's a motion and second that we combine the position from secretary and treasurer to secretary treasurer. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Hi.
I,
Opposed?
Aye. that was 4, I'm sorry.
Okay, so it was unanimous, right?
Yes, it was.
Let the minutes show that it was unanimous. Okay, that's the simple stuff to take care of. The other thing, the sole purpose of the bigger purpose of this meeting was to begin our budget discussions. Now, I put in front of you a draft budget. Now, I want to state some caveats with this. First of all, the only reason why you're getting this is because I like to work on spreadsheets and I like to organize my thinking. It is a draft. I usually put draft in big letters on it. Notice I put draft on your copies. This is simply a format that's suggested. The format is the same format. I took the headings right out of the Lakes book, if you look in the back in the appendix, that this is the format that they had suggested. You can, and then what I did is the suggested format is this, but then I have separate pages behind this for each one of these categories. So that as we go through this, and if you look at your pages, it kind of divides them out and discussion. So the only reason why I did this was simply to have a starting place for our discussion. I figured it would take at least 2 meetings, this meeting and probably a next one to finalize it. One to get it out there and see what we're talking about. The next one would be to take and start to bring some things together. There are a few pieces in here that are pretty cut and dry. The revenue, let me talk a little bit about the format. The formatting of this is usually you're working with, in a public entity, you're working with 3 years. You're working with the previous year, you're working with the current year, and then you're working with the next year. And so this format will, or a similar format will be one that we carry forward. You notice that the preceding year, the actual, it's all zeros because there is no money. The current year to June, which would bring us up to the first part of the fiscal or the calendar year, it has $3,000. It's actually $3,100. That's what we've collected through donations to this point. That has been our only revenue. And now that we have a bank account, those things are we can report it as revenue. You can see that under the revenue is tax levy, special charges, donations, contributions, grant reimbursement, and carryover cash balance. It's pretty simple accounting. Now, the expenditures and appropriation capital costs, that's zero. I don't want anybody, I put it in there. I'm not proposing that we buy anything, but you know, you do have to make a space. You know, there's a placeholder for capital equipment if somewhere in the future we have capital equipment, but I think it's appropriate that we put it in there as a potential placeholder. Cost of operations going down through here. Yeah, I've just put photo copying, postage and supplies, conferences, dues and fees, legal. And then there's 3 areas for a project. There's a grant portion and insurance, which brings us, those would be, again, that's what's in the book. Those would be, I think I changed dues and fees around. There was something else, but dues and fees is what I'm most used to. Any questions? This is the summary page. Any questions on this? I'm just gonna kind of go through this if you don't mind, and then we can open it up for discussion just so that you know what you're looking at.
Sounds good.
The first page is the revenue. Notice that the levy is blank. Donations, there's actually $3,100, not 3,000. There's nothing for the grants. There's no carryover or cash balance. Okay.
Good question for you.
Sure.
As far as revenue, aren't assessments an appropriate option?
Assessments.
So there's tax levies and assessments as part of the district, right?
Right,
So you only have the one.
right.
Would you want to have a placeholder for the other?
For the assessments, we could. The special assessment portion of that is really complex. And so I don't know if it was in here or not.
Well, I know what you're referring to, Al, and
Oh, yeah,
at the
specialist-
conference at Stevens Point, the person that was in charge of the discussion said, made it very clear that assessments were very difficult to handle as a lake district. And his strong suggestion was that you avoid them at all costs.
What's,
Because of that, it takes so much legal work to complete an assessment process rather than
no,
a
I
regular
guess,
levy.
I'm sorry, I'm thinking assessment is that each property in the Lake District is assessed a $50 fee or some, for example, some flat number.
That was discussed. And the fairest way to assess is based on the mill rate. Is what was discussed.
Another hypothetical,
What's the difference?
Well, I think what Jerry's suggesting is that we just assess every property $50,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
which I don't have a problem with, but others might when you consider that there's a large range in property values on the lake from down here in the $50,000-$75,000 range to we have a couple of properties on the lake that are worth multi-millions.
Mhm.
And if you have a property that isn't worth a lot, you're being charged $50 for the property that's very valuable is still
So
only
that's
being charged
that's the
$50.
difference between the two then. Jerry, is that what you were talking about, sort of, or?
I wasn't talking about the fairness. I'm well aware of taxes and how some are fair and some are not.
Yeah,
In some opinions, there's others' opinions. I'm just saying it is an opportunity or an option. And if this is,
So
Ethel
you-
was going through and saying, this is kind of just an example, and this is the way we'd like to lay it out. I'm just saying, hey, there's a spot that it could be.
yeah, so that could be like a line item on there that whether or not it ever gets filled, it's there.
Exactly.
I think, yeah, it makes sense to me.
Okay, that's my only.
I can put it back in.
I think it'd be better to just have it there, even if it's not something that gets used. But it's already there, so it's not something that gets added later, just having sat through my own pile of county budget stuff and seeing lots
Hmm.
of zeros and certain lines that just stay there, so.
Okay, no, I put it on mine to put it back in.
Okay,
And I think one of the other reasons I took it out, just so that you know, was that Tom had said it was a really complicated process. And we had some rumors in January or February that we were gonna start special assessing everybody. And so I just took it out to avoid all of that stuff, so, but I can certainly put it back in.
Right, it is an option.
Right.
As a way
Right.
to tax.
Right.
Assess each property.
Right.
Yeah.
why is that harder? It seems to me that'd be easier, cause you just say $50 to everybody.
Exactly.
But I think it's the, there's.
I mean, I'd
there's
be
legal
upset
ramifications.
if I had a low cost property, which mine is not one of the higher valued properties, and I was like charged $100, and then somebody else at $1 million property was charged $100, but it seems to me it would be easier just because it was like, okay, everybody has to throw in $100. But there, obviously, you guys were at that conference and it sounds like it was more complicated for some reason.
Yeah, the thought of in the conference was that you should avoid it like the plague. I'm serious, that it was that complex and took that much legal work.
Hmm.
To me, it sounded like the lawyer's fees alone would be very, very high. And of
Okay,
course, you have to have it done in a specific timetable. And that-
Why would we have a lawyer involved
It's required for that.
for our tax
For
levy?
for a special assessment,
For the
for an
special-
assessment. If you're talking about so much of property rather than just using the tax levy doesn't require an attorney to implement it, but an assessment would, a special assessment would.
I'll have to read up on that.
Okay,
I'm not seeing it.
well, and it was, the meeting was attended by a legal group and Boardman Clark is
They're out
a
of
law firm out of Rapids,
Madison.
Madison, okay. And he was there and he concurred. He's like,
Engineers recommend to use engineers all the time. So do lawyers. Yeah, and
yeah,
And I don't know that from and I have a limited understanding. I would think that special assessments are for special projects or for some very specific things. And that's why not a blanket taxation.
Right.
That's my only understanding.
I'm not arguing that
Yeah.
we should do a special assessment or an assessment.
Right.
I'm just saying.
Right.
It's an option.
I put it down.
Thank
It's in there.
it's in there.
Anything else? On that page?
On the summary page,
Yes.
well, I think we discussed it. That insurance
Yep. Oh, it has zeros, but you have, wait until we get to that.
Yeah,
next
sounds good.
page.
We were only on the revenue so
Right.
far.
Okay, got it.
And I have to put assessments. And grants, that was the other form of, it's a cost sharing. And realize with grants, and we'll get to this a little bit later, but with grants, you're reimbursed on the grants. So that means you have to have the money up front. And then you're reimbursed. You don't get the grant money to implement. You spend your own money and then you get money back from the state. Now in operations, this is just mostly guesses on my part, okay? Except the newspaper postings, I put down $1,200. It's that might be a little light. It's running about $93 a month for newspaper postings. And I don't know what it's gonna cost for the annual meeting posting, and we'll wanna take out a little bit bigger ad on that so that we have the budget summary included in that. So these numbers may be a little bit light. Jim, I'm kind of relying on you on the technology cost. I just put down $500 because that's about what we had said. The page, the website was the in-kind contribution.
Yeah, as far as like the contribution, but it's basically done. So
Right.
that's not gonna be
Right,
an ongoing
right.
thing, so.
Well, that's the only dollar amount I knew. I
Yeah.
didn't know if we were going to get a YouTube subscription or
That's free too.
uh,
That's
It's
free
free
too.
or Zoom. If we wanted to do a Zoom,
That we'll have to discuss, because if we decide to make, I mean, you can do a free Zoom subscription. However, it gets cut off after 40 minutes.
Right.
So a paid subscription is not that much. It's under $20 a month.
Right.
However, there's a limitation on the number of like potential people that can basically tune in,
right,
which is I think 100. So, and after that, people get dropped off. So there is a thing that Zoom makes available called a webinar, which it would be ideal for a format like this, which is basically people can watch. They wouldn't have to be like, joining and all that type of
Interactive.
stuff. It could still be interactive in that they could post like chat or questions, like during the public comment portion of it. However, that's a much higher cost to do. Yes. It's because I looked into it. I looked into just for our first one, the cost of upgrading my account, because I have enough things where that might come in handy. And it was something like, I want to say it was over 100 a month
oh, really?
to do it. So we would have to kind of evaluate. And then there are some other options that we can do, which would be to just stream the meeting so people can watch it and tune in on either YouTube or another service. And I've done that a bunch of times, but then you guys are having the committees kind of relying on my expertise to do that, and then somebody would have to continue to do that,
Right.
potentially going forward,
Right.
unless we set up a system for that. But those are kind of some of the options. And I know that there's been a number of people that, especially obviously the annual meeting, and I always want to repeat this just in case there are new people here, that the annual meeting by state statute has to be attended in person. There's no absentee balloting or any of that stuff.
Proxy.
You have to be here to vote. You don't have to be here for any of these interim meetings in the meantime. And it would be good to, make it available so that people can actually just kind of tune in and watch it. And it would kind of be deciding whether we want to do that expense. The easiest thing would obviously be to do a Zoom webinar thing. It's less expensive to do like a live YouTube stream because that's free. So
There'd be no interaction.
there would be, yes, there would, well, no, you could have people could comment on that YouTube stream. You could also feed it to Facebook on our Facebook page and people could comment on that. You know, and that could be their, if we wanted to have some public comment via that method as well. Of course, then we'd have to be sitting here
We'd have to
looking,
monitor.
you monitor all that stuff. Or have a volunteer that would be
Right.
doing that for us during the meetings.
Well, the goal of all of this is to improve communication.
Yes, transparency.
Right, okay, so which is going to get us there the most cost effective way? Would be my question.
Well, YouTube would do it.
Right.
And
But that's a broadcast, correct?
yes, though people could comment and post comments during the live stream,
Right,
which could be monitored at that point. But, that's kind of how the county does it for the most part. When they have a meeting and we stream it live, you don't comment during it.
right,
You can submit comments ahead of time.
right.
Yeah, that was gonna be my point, is that there's only really one time. Item D here is when comments are appropriate.
Yes. Right. So, and that can always be a reminder that if public comment, if you want to make a public comment, there are a couple of ways to do it. Attend the meeting. You can also do what the county does, which people will send an email, and those are actually read into the record during the meeting.
Right.
For public comment that way. And just that the stream is just a service, to let people be able to watch it live.
Right.
They won't, they can submit a comment ahead of time.
Comments?
Well, free is always great. If we wanted to have lots of feedback, I don't see $100 a month as a barrier, as much of a barrier. I mean, it's something if we want to plan for it, but
The only thing I like about that is that if we continue to hold these meetings here, the infrastructure is here to just simply do it. I mean, when I'm recording this account, I'm using my own Zoom account. So if the Lake District had its own Zoom account, I would just tie it into that system. Jerry?
So this room is set up best for Zoom, YouTube, webinars, what?
It's basically the room is set up this is a giant webcam is essentially what it is.
Okay.
With all these microphones into it, and it's going through software that then is fed into Zoom. I could probably configure it to stream it out to YouTube or something else as well. If I worked with the county, the IT guy to do that. And it would then, if through YouTube, it would be free.
How does the county do it? I know it goes to YouTube, but is it straight to YouTube?
It used to be during the pandemic, and now what they do is they're doing what I do, which is they record the meeting and then they post it after the fact for people to watch.
But you're recording it on Zoom.
Yeah, because it's easy to do that. It's
Right.
just set up to do that, but we could also make the Zoom. I mean, if people knew the Zoom meeting thing, they could actually hop on and tune in right now live if they did.
Right.
But I'd actually have to let them in the room.
Well, if we had our own account, it could be a link, part of the agenda, and they could watch it live. I'm not seeing a giant demand for communication so far through our website, through our Facebook page, nor our email, so. A standard Zoom account should be sufficient, in my opinion.
Yeah, because it could, I think it might be it might only be $14 a month to have the unlimited time frame. And then we can reevaluate it, because I think you can have up to 100 people in that room before it would say, okay, that's full. And we're not gonna, I don't think we'd ever have that. We don't have 100 people here.
Well,
So,
I hope that we don't have the entertainment value for 100 people that,
well, if you start wearing some costumes or sing a song in between agenda items, then people might tune in.
two things you don't want me to do, and one of them is sing. Okay,
So the costume is not out of the question then.
well,
Okay.
Oh, you're
yeah,
saying.
whatever.
So I agree with the Zoom, because it's inexpensive, certainly, and like you said, the only time that's appropriate for comments would be an email prior to the meeting.
Well, and if we had a Zoom meeting, correct me if I'm wrong, but if one of us couldn't make it,
Right.
we can participate via Zoom if we're in this facility.
Yep.
And it doesn't look like they're ready to kick us out yet, right?
No,
And
no.
so we're good,
as long as we work within the schedule, that's why we're
Right.
having another meeting so quickly.
right? Okay, so is it the consensus of the group that we should move towards not the free Zoom, but the low cost Zoom account?
Yeah, because then, like Jerry said, then we can actually publish that link in the agenda that people can tune in to
Right.
it.
So I move, I guess, well, I don't know, it's just part of this.
It's a consensus, and we'll just add it in. Jim, could you, or do you want me to figure out what that dollar amount is? Or
I'll figure it out.
okay, and if Jim, if you can look at that technology piece, is there anything else that we would need?
The domain registration, you should probably not be paying for.
Right,
Yeah, probably not.
right. No, and we have a checking account now, so we can actually start one, but for the sake of this, let's just budget for it and work on it that way.
I'm pretty sure it's $15 a month, so you can figure that out in the budget for for Zoom. The domain registration, I think, is $12 a year. But let me look it up.
Okay. While you're doing that, I'll just move on to copying costs.
Yeah.
I put down $500 for copying. It's $600 for the annual meeting, right? 600 and like 650 or something.
Whatever that estimate was.
All right,
Yeah.
and so I kind of divided that. Part of that would be copying cost and the other part would be postage. Because we have to mail
Got
it
it.
out.
Okay.
And then that also gives us some money for periodic mailings. Again, to communicate to people, it would give us some money to mail. Maybe postcards or whatever, if their time should be.
Yeah, I don't know if it would just be clearer to say annual meeting mailing in a semi-annual mailing as well. I mean, however you want to do it, but
Right.
I don't think we're gonna make copies for anyone. I mean,
Well, just meeting copies for agendas for the audience. I've been running them off of my printer. Tom's been going into the
Marketplace.
marketplace to photocopy and things like that.
so we're providing agendas at the door.
We have been
Yeah.
limited number, 10 or
Yep.
so.
Hmm.
We don't do a lot. We expect people to share, but it's so they have something.
Oh, yeah.
And when we get really good at this and people can look at them on their website,
Online,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking is we
Right.
don't need to print paper, so.
right? But some people like to make notes on paper. Newspaper postings, like I said, I'm a little shy on this. I'll do a little more research as to what those amounts are. I forgot when I did this, I did $100 a month, but then I forgot, well, like this month, we're gonna have 2 meetings, so that will be 2 postings plus the annual meeting, so we maybe take that up to $2,000. And supplies, if you're using printer cartridges or things like that, there's things that we can reimburse the commissioners for. So that brings us, that's about it's 800 less, so it'd be about $4,300 instead of 3,500 for operate or for communications. The conference, underneath the conference, my thinking on this conference was the Lakes and Rivers Conference. And I've figured for 3 people, mileage, meals and hotels. That's what that's about, to pay for people to go to that. Now, I would suggest that we have at least 1 or 2 in there. 3 maybe is a little bit too much. It's just a suggestion. But to reimburse people for mileage, these are all at the federal rates. And you don't stay many places for $100 a night, so I know you're gonna have to pay for some of your own stuff. I don't think you can get a room at the Holiday Inn for $100.
So this is not any conference, it's the annual
Well,
Wisconsin Lakes Conference?
I just use that as, I don't know if there's any others out there.
The one at Stout. That was $32 this year. I believe. But luckily that's close by and that includes lunch, so.
Right. There's also dues and no, I didn't put that down, but I just generally ballparked it, so. If you,
I guess as a board member of the nonprofits that I've been a part of here in the last 25 years. I always have donated my time and talents in when education and other events arise. It's on my dime. I kind of have that expectation here, but I don't know if that's out of line or not.
open for discussion.
I don't have a problem paying for my own either, but I think. We don't know who's gonna be sitting in these chairs. In September. So. They may have a different outlook, so there should be some money in there. In case. They don't have the same expectations or the same ability to pay.
I kind of agree with Tom, just because this is that, if you think about it, I think about this as almost like the county, how the county works. This isn't really a. We don't have money, but it's not a nonprofit board. This is a quasi-government agency, essentially, is what this is. And as part of that, I may not necessarily, it can be like, okay, maybe somebody can decide, okay, I can cover my own hotel expense, but maybe the cost of the conference or whatever should be covered. Like when I do a county thing, I usually attend two counties associations meetings every year and county picks that up, the hotel, the cost of attending. And not all counties do that, but Dunn County does because they think it's important to attend. So I think it's a little different than a standard nonprofit, just because it is a more of a, like I said, quasi government entity essentially, because you have elected members and you're making decisions about potential taxation and everything else that goes along with it. So and it can be that those conferences could be part of, it can be budgeted, but not, and still voted on whether or not, it's like, okay, do we want to do this? Do we have the budget to send two members to this conference? Should the committee pick up the cost of attending or that type of thing? So I see value in including it, just because I'm kind of looking at it from how the county does stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I don't disagree. But I'm just curious as to who goes or who approves or which ones. And I mean, your county,
I think if you open for a discussion with the county, it's just that,
your county manager approves your travel, right?
yeah, I mean, and it's
Here we have no manager.
right. And with, but it could be discussed, with the committee. It's like, should we send a couple people? Who wants to go? It might be a situation where I think this last one, if I had wanted to go, I couldn't because I had a video shoot during that exact same time. So with these county committees or these functions, they make it open to anybody on the board who wants to go. And it's usually only a handful of us that want to take 3 days and go to a conference anyway. So.
Well, what if I take the numbers and go from 3 to 2? Okay, so that still leaves in some incentive. The way that I would foresee this happening, if 3 or 4 people wanted to go, then you just divide the money between
Sure.
what you have. And,
Yep.
and like I said, at $100 a night, you don't stay at a Holiday Inn Express for $100 a night. And so it's going to cost you some money anyway. But that would incentivize people, or if people were on the budget, and notice there's no per diem in there. I mean, for some government organizations, if you take a lost day from your work, you get a per diem day and things like that. That is not in here. It's just simply transportation, meals, and the hotel. And the meals at $59 is right off the federal thing for Wisconsin Rapids or that area. So
Yep.
that's. So how about if I take it from 3 to 2 and then we can divide it that way?
That's fine.
Okay.
Yep.
Facility rental, I put $1,000 down. I didn't know, first of all, it's gonna cost us $65 an hour for the room or the auditorium for the annual meeting. But I put a little extra in there in case they kick us out of here and we have to go someplace else and we have to pay for room space. I mean,
Right.
we'll try free, but it's easier to have a little bit in there for it. Legal, I put $1,200 in for legal. We don't have an attorney, but there's fees in there in case we need it. We don't have to use it. And you're gonna pay about $200 an hour, so that's really about 6 hours worth of work, so it really isn't a whole lot. That would be in case we need some contracts reviewed or those kinds of things. So it's not a whole lot of money, but it is some money for legal fees. And We can come back to that in a second, because I know you probably have a question on that one. But, the insurance, Tom had informed me this before the meeting, that a budget figure of $2,500 for our insurances would be a reasonable amount to budget for. We don't have any of the bids in, but that would be an appropriate dollar amount. Can you speak to that a little bit, Tom?
Sure, for the reference that we use, the people of the lakes, they suggest you go to local brokers, which I did. And I asked 3 of them for them to review our Lake District and make an application. And when they do that, the company that they make an application to then has to forward that application to the state. And I think that's what slows things down a little bit. So I made inquiries to these brokers a few weeks ago, and it's still not back yet. So what I did was email a gentleman by the name of Dan Butkus, who is on the board of the state lake districts. I can't remember the exact title, but Dan's been a really good sounding board. And he said, theirs is just a little bit more. Their lake district is a little bit more than this because they own a boat. But he said without that boat, it would be about $2,500 a year. And he suggested that we use that figure to start with. So that's how we arrived at the $2,500 figure.
Okay.
And what is it? Is that insuring? Is it workers' comp
That's
type?
work comp,
Okay,
that's general liability, and that's officers and
There's no emissions
yeah, it's errors and omissions.
okay.
and workers' comp.
And worker comp, yep. Yep, so that would cover us completely.
Back to the legal, questions, comments? I'm sorry, I skipped over that. I wanted to get Tom a chance to talk about the fill in the blank. I mean, if we don't spend it, we don't spend it.
Right.
That's the whole idea, is not to have to spend it.
Yeah, yeah, it's
But you
just,
can't get it once once
Right.
the budget's passed, we can't get it.
yeah, I agree.
Yep.
I mean, that sounds like a reasonable thing to kind of start off with, and it depends on, we end up finding for legal representation and what they ultimately charge.
Right.
And I forwarded that additional name that Jim Crave had recommended, who has some experience. I don't, we could reach out to.
And he's local.
Yes, right.
Any other questions on operations? Is there anything we're forgetting? I mean, and I don't necessarily need an answer now, but if you're looking at this between now and the next meeting, next week, and something pops up, we'll certainly put it on the agenda so that we can look through it and add it or subtract it or discuss the issue further. Again, this is draft. Okay, the last page is the project page. And the only thing I knew of, and I'll just start because I put it in there, so I'll address it. Is a surface water grant, making a surface water grant application. Now, those grant specs come out this month. And by September, to get a surface water grant application, and you have to have it done by September, or the first round, the draft has to be pretty much done by the September, and then the awards are right around Thanksgiving. And so, but the reason why there's a dollar amount in there is, and I don't have a lot of experience with the DNR grants. I have a lot of experience with educational grants, is that you have to upfront the money. And then you're reimbursed after your expenditures. Now, you upfront the money, but you also get credit for volunteer time. Even some of the time, meeting time discussing this and organizing that can go into it. But to be honest with you, you're credited $12 an hour is your volunteer time is what you're given credit for.
Well, better than minimum wage, I guess.
Not much.
Well,
I tried to remember the last time I made $12 an hour, but but anyway, the maximum award for the surface water grant for the planning and grant for the management plan, which is essentially strategic planning, is $5,000. The gal that is in charge of the grant process for our region is on vacation. So I didn't get a chance to talk to her. I had a brief email conversation with her, but I think she misunderstood what I was asking, and I got a different answer than the question I asked. And so I have to follow through with that. But from my standpoint, with this initial group, there's a lot of discussion out there as to projects and what to do and those kinds of things. What I'd like to see to do are maybe the legacy from my participation with this group would be to have a plan or a strategic plan, or call it whatever you want, that we can communicate to the public. The gentleman that spoke at the last meeting, I no longer want to sit here and say, well, our charge is nebulous. I want to say, here's what we're going to do. Here's where we're spending money. I want to be able to go to the taxpayer and say, okay, we got these 5 projects. This project is the first one because that's going to give us the biggest bang for our buck. I want to be able to take and sit down with the members of the lake community and say, what are your issues? Because the issues up on by Chapney Park are different than those of us down on the lower end of the lake. And those kinds of things. And so I think this starts to get us. And the other thing I want to do is I want to be able to take and have a consistent set of data that doesn't move. That depending on who you talk to, you're looking at this, or not only relying on, we can all rely on, if we go to the end of our docks and look down, and right now you can see the bottom of the lake. In about another week,
I can't see the bottom of the lake because the wind's been blowing a bunch of crap up to my dock, and it looks, I don't know what it is.
okay, down on the south end of the lake, you can see down to the bottom.
Okay, see.
For now, but I think that's going to change.
So you're talking, this grant that you're talking about would actually help us create that strategic plan. Which the strategic plan then helps determine, the projects that are part of that plan. But the plan is the key thing, which is a good idea. So
Right.
And I think having a strategic plan would certainly bode well with anyone that was considering giving us money, grant money.
I think it would help immensely.
Oh, it'd be
if-
huge with the grant
Right.
application process.
Right, that we have a plan, we have a management plan. We've discussed it. People have had an opportunity to have input in it. And so that gives us. Well, first of all, I think it builds the credibility of the Lake District. The second thing is it gives people a chance to have meaningful input. And that doesn't mean that everybody's project is going to get done or whatever, but then we can start to sort out, well, we don't have a lot of invasive species, but we have some. Okay,
Mhm.
we don't have a lot of light. in our water, so that we don't have a lot of plant life, but we do have some plant life. How does that, what importance of that is compared to other things? And the other piece that I think we really need to stress as a part of this is education as to, you know, that's that other component of educating the public. It's a whole lot easier talking to the public when you have a well thought out plan than it is to say, you know, here, I'm from the Lake District, trust me. Okay.
I'm here to help.
Yeah. Well, take it for, that's my spiel for that anyway. And that's what, and I don't know that I'm going to get that number refined a little bit more. But I'm hoping that some of that money that we may need to have some engineering. But we may need to have some consultancy to, you know, not everybody is going to help us for free.
Mhm.
And so that gets us started. That's my pitch on that. And with that,
Good,
Liz-
Al, thank you.
That's a good plan.
just so that you guys know, I always estimate light. I never estimate heavy on my dollar amounts. So it's probably underestimated than overestimated, but are there any other projects that we should be considering?
I think we have to have that. I mean, the strategic plan is the basis, but on what all other projects will be based. So that has to come first before almost consideration of anything else at this point. I think.
I would agree.
Yep.
I think that's critical. You can't really plan anything else until, how can you decide? You can't decide other projects unless you've got a plan. And it's, you know, it's based on research and it's not just made up, so.
Talking about plans and in this, again, the strategic plan part of this is there's at least two other groups that right now are in the planning process. One of them, I believe, is connected with the DNR. Their area plan for the Red Cedar Basin is up in 2025, but the other one is the name of their plan is it's the partnership of all of the groups in the Red Cedar Basin. They have a meeting on the 7th. It's Chase Cummings sits on that, Dan Zier from UW, Eau Claire is on there. There's Farm Group, there is Barron County, there's about 3 county conservationists that sit in there, and that group is rewriting their plan. So the fortunate thing is, if we're writing a plan and these other 2 groups are writing our plan, then we can take and make sure that our plan dovetails with their plan, and it's kind of an opportune time to do that. And the other thing is, just while I'm on that subject, that group is meeting on the 7th.
Yeah, next Tuesday. It's in Barron, right?
Is in Barron.
Isn't
They move it around. I have to look it up, but if anybody's interested in going, let me know. I'm going to go, but if you wanna ride share or if you wanna, yeah, at the Barron County Government Center, it's Wednesday, June 7th at 9 a.m. in Barron County. And if you want to go up there and do that, if you want to swing over to my Sumner Township property, I can give you a tour of my food plots.
As long as we're not put to work.
And you can collect some wood ticks and as you wander around, they're free.
Yeah. Poison ivy too?
No poison ivy, but lots of wood ticks. Lots of wood ticks. So anyway, that's the Red Cedar River Water Quality Partnership is the name of the group. That's what I was searching for. Uh, anything else on the budget? So just kind of a recap. Jim, you're gonna kind of give me a little better handle on $500, or do you think that's enough?
What is the $500 towards at this point?
That was my WAG method of just, but right now I
mean, essentially, that's like a grant on my part or a
Right.
donation on my part.
right.
The domain name renewal every year that the district will be responsible for is $16 a year.
Okay, well, just if we go with all of the renewals and the technology pieces. And Zoom. And if there's something else that you think we need to be doing, could you just kind of
Yeah,
just
I can,
itemize
I
that?
will itemize that for
And
to
just
add to the budget. For the
Email and that,
communications
then we'll
portion.
refine that $500 to what it should be. I will, and I actually did take some of this while you were
Is
talking.
was that in your copying, postage and supplies portion of it? Or
No, just the technology. I didn't do anything on the dues and fees. Other than facility rental,
oh, there's the technology. Okay.
and there's a technology piece
Yeah.
up on top. And I will adjust the conference stuff. We can put that in there. So that I'll back that down. Anything, and I'll add the $2,500 for insurances. Is there anything I'm missing? One point that I should note, okay, the way that this is set up also, you do realize that when you have like grant reimbursement and donations, you subtract those. Okay, those you subtract out from your budget expenditure. So the way this is set up, and I mean, if you want me to do it different, I can do it different. But normally what you do is those donations come off of, those go in, they're subtracted so that they're less your levy.
Yes.
Okay, so that if we collect $3,100 and we have a budget of, let's say, $13,000, well, you would take that $3,000 off of that budget expenditures, and then you would levy the $10,000. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
I just wanted to be clear about that. Just so that somebody didn't think, well, you levy over here and you get donations over here and you get them both. It's usually you take the donations off of the other side. And unless that is changed, that's the way we'll do it. But that's got to be a vote by the board. Anything else? Okay, point of clarification for the board and the audience, next meeting, the regular monthly meeting is June 8th. We had said both those dates, but there was a conflict at the county. The more we're flexible, the longer we can stay here. We have access to the technology, air conditioning, comfortable seats. Hopefully, we don't have meetings so long that we need comfortable seats.
Right.
And then our next meeting next week's meeting will determine the July meeting. And that'll be the meeting before our annual meeting. And then after that annual meeting, then it's up to that board then to move forward with their meeting schedule.
While I'm thinking about it too, I'll send a note right away to the county manager to see what the Thursdays are available in July
Okay.
for a meeting date.
Now
And that meeting will actually take place after we have submitted the information to L&M Mail Service, right?
Oh, the July meeting?
Yeah,
I'd really like to finalize some of the stuff to be able to get that out and give us at least a week to run around. We're gonna have to run around and we're gonna have to get a current list of
Do we want our meeting in early July then? If we want to have that one additional meeting before stuff goes out?
well, July 1st is Saturday. So could we have it on June 29th before the 4th of July?
Is that Thursday?
It is.
Okay.
It's just a thought. I mean, it's not something. If we want to get it some more accomplished before the
Yeah,
mailing goes
I
out.
think we need,
I think June 29th. I think that would be easier to schedule that than something the week of the 4th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you could check on that. Add it to your calendars,
Mhm.
June 29th, tentatively, 5 o'clock. I was just gonna bring up the draft of the agenda that I sent out to you. We're gonna talk about bylaws.
Mhm.
We're going to. I'm trying to do this off the top of my head while I talk about this. The Lake District bylaws, the annual meeting preparations, that would be the registration process, voting, and other logistical considerations. And I have the 2024 budget on there. And that's it, really. I mean, it's getting down to our big work is getting this done, getting the budget done, getting ready for that annual meeting. Is there anything else I'm forgetting to add to that agenda? I always forget something, guys, so you gotta help me.
Which is this the agenda for next week?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because we'll have to get that posted like right away too.
Like,
Yep.
it's tomorrow morning.
Yes.
Yep, I'll do
It
that.
snuck up on me, a little bit for the paper. I've been really trying really hard in the paper to get it 2 weeks in advance to the paper so that it's actually a week and a half before the meeting, but sometimes you just can't do it. Like we ran into problems with, Zach's resignation. It's posted, it's been done. It's, kind of, you do things I just don't like doing things last minute to, if you do too many last minute changes, and it just, I think, cuts into your credibility.
Did you add, treasurer's report? Seeing we have money now, we should have a
Good.
report
Good point.
of that.
Good idea.
Just makes me look important.
You just want to talk more. that's
Yeah,
all.
that's it.
Okay, treasurer's report, it's on there.
Okay.
That's a good point. If that's all, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you for coming, everyone. Was there anybody that you wanted to recognize while we're?
You guys wanna come on up if
Is
you'd
it part of
like?
the official meeting?
Okay, we're not gonna adjourn just yet.
Okay.
We just want to recognize.
Unadjourned.
We just want to recognize some people. Tom, would you?
Good evening, everyone. This is Chuck Tack. He's here representing his family, the Tack family.
And we have a pledge for $500. We have $400 here. One of my sons is a little late, but we'll get the money for you.
You got one of those too, huh?
Yeah, that's my wife Leanne and my son-in-law Christian and daughter.
Wonderful.
Yeah, don't leave. We'll get your photo and we get it up on the website. But thank you very much from all of us.
Okay, now I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Well, we already have one and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I
We're adjourned. Thank you very much. 1 hour and 10 minutes.